Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. My name is Harold Winchester, and I'm 78 years old. As I write this story in late December, sitting in my study overlooking the snow-covered streets of Burlington, Vermont, I can barely believe what transpired last Christmas. It was the day I discovered the true nature of my family, and the day I taught them a lesson they'll never forget. For the past 15 years, I've been what you might call the family safety net. After selling my chain of sporting goods stores back in 2008, I retired with more money than I knew what to do with. My wife, Margaret, had passed away 3 years earlier from cancer, and without her, the money felt meaningless. So when my son David came to me with tears in his eyes, explaining how the recession had destroyed his real estate business, how could I refuse to help? "Dad, we're about to lose everything," he had said, sitting in this very study where I now write. "The house, the cars, everything. The kids won't be able to finish college. Jennifer's beside herself with worry." That conversation marked the beginning of my monthly checks, $5,000 every single month without fail. David insisted it was temporary just until he got back on his feet, but temporary stretched into permanent, and the requests only grew. There was always something. Medical bills, car repairs, mortgage payments, tuition fees. Each time David would appear at my door with that same defeated expression, that same slouch in his shoulders that made him look like the boy who'd once come to me after breaking a window with his baseball. I never questioned it. Why would I? He was my only child, and his family was my only connection to the future. My grandchildren, Tyler and Madison, were in college now, and I took pride in knowing I was helping secure their education. Jennifer, my daughter-in-law, would send me thank you cards every few months, always handwritten, always expressing how grateful they were for my support during these difficult times. The checks weren't the only support I provided. When David's car broke down, I bought him a new one. Nothing fancy, just a reliable Honda Accord. When Madison needed a laptop for her graphic design courses, I covered it. When Tyler wanted to join a fraternity but couldn't afford the dues, I wrote another check. I even paid for family vacations, believing David's explanation that the kids needed something to look forward to during these tough times. I lived modestly myself. My house, while comfortable, was the same 2-story colonial Margaret and I had bought in 1982. I drove a 10-year-old Buick. My biggest indulgence was my weekly dinner at Murphy's Steakhouse, where I'd ordered the same ribeye and baked potato I'd been enjoying for 20 years. The waitresses knew me by name, and I'd often eat alone, reading a book or watching the families around me, missing my Margaret something terrible. It was loneliness, I suppose, that made me so willing to help. Money was my way of staying connected, of feeling needed. When you're 78 and widowed, when your knees ache in the morning and you find yourself talking to photographs of people who aren't there anymore, being needed feels like a lifeline. Every thank you from Jennifer, every phone call from the grandkids, every hug from David, they were worth more than the money I sent. The first crack in my belief came in early November, quite by accident. I'd driven to David's neighborhood in South Burlington to drop off a birthday card for Madison. She was turning 21, and I'd included a check for $500, wanting her celebration to be special. David's house was in Oak Hill Estates, a modest development he'd moved to after downsizing from their previous home. Or so I thought. As I turned onto his street, I noticed something odd. There was a new car in the driveway, a white Tesla Model X. My first thought was that it belonged to a visitor, perhaps one of Jennifer's friends. But as I got closer, I saw the license plate, Gendav 1, Jennifer and David. I sat in my car for a moment, confused. A Tesla. Those cars cost more than I'd spent on vehicles in the last 20 years. I remember David telling me just last month that they were struggling to keep up with their mortgage payments. How could they afford a Tesla? I didn't go to the door that day. Instead, I drove home, the birthday card still on my passenger seat, my mind churning with questions. Maybe they'd won it in a raffle. Maybe it was a company car from a new job David hadn't told me about. There had to be an explanation. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I looked up David's social media profiles. I'm not much for computers, but I knew enough to find Facebook. What I discovered there made my chest tight with a feeling I couldn't quite name. The photos went back months. There was David and Jennifer in Cancun, raising champagne glasses on a beach. Celebrating 25 years with my amazing husband. #blessed living our best life, Jennifer's caption read. The date was 3 weeks after David had asked me for money to fix their roof. I scrolled further. Tyler at a music festival in California, VIP passes visible around his neck. Madison showing off a new Louis Vuitton handbag. David on a golf course I recognized as the exclusive Woodland Country Club, where membership fees ran $20,000 a year. Jennifer at a spa retreat with her sister, cucumber slices over their eyes, champagne in hand. My hands shook as I continued scrolling. Every photo told the same story. A family living in luxury, enjoying experiences I'd never allowed myself despite having the means. The comments from their friends were revealing too. "You guys always know how to live it up," one read. "Must be nice to be retired at 50, said another under a photo of David on a yacht. Retired? David had told me just last month that his new consulting business was struggling to find clients. I spent the next 3 weeks investigating, though it pained me to do so. I hired a private investigator, a quiet man named Tom Brennan, who came recommended by my lawyer. What Tom discovered was worse than I'd imagined. David hadn't worked in 3 years. The consulting business was a fiction, the house in Oak Hill Estates. They'd paid it off entirely 2 years ago. The modest neighborhood. Oak Hill Estates was one of the most exclusive developments in South Burlington, with homes valued at over $1 million. They owned 3 cars, the Tesla, a BMW X5, and a Porsche 911 that David kept in a separate garage. Tyler wasn't struggling in college. He was president of his fraternity and had spent spring break in Dubai. Madison had her own apartment off campus, a luxury 2-bedroom that cost more in rent than most people's mortgages. The kicker? Jennifer's Instagram account, which she thought I'd never find, where she regularly posted about their travels, their purchases, their blessed life. One post from just 2 months ago showed her and David at a charity gala. She'd written, "So grateful we're in a position to give back. Robert and I just pledged $50,000 to the Children's Hospital. For philanthropy, be blessed eats giving back." They were donating money to charity while taking mine. I sat with this information for days, feeling something die inside me with each passing hour. It wasn't the money. I had plenty of money. It was the deception, the elaborate theater they'd performed for 15 years. Every sad face, every story of hardship, every grateful hug had been a lie. They hadn't needed my help. They'd wanted my money. And they'd been willing to play act poverty to get it, to let me believe I was saving them while they laughed behind my back. The private investigator had given me one more piece of information that burned like acid in my stomach. He'd managed to record a conversation between David and Jennifer at a restaurant. They were discussing Christmas plans, and my name came up. "We should probably look a bit more modest when Dad comes over," David had said. "Hide the new watches, maybe park the Tesla at the neighbor's." Jennifer had laughed. "Your father's sweet, but he's so gullible. I almost feel bad sometimes." "Don't," David had replied. "He's got more money than he knows what to do with. We're doing him a favor, giving him purpose. Besides, it's all coming to us eventually anyway." That phrase, "it's all coming to us eventually anyway," echoed in my head as December arrived. They were waiting for me to die, seeing me not as a father or grandfather, but as a future inheritance. Every check I wrote was just an advance on money they had already counted as theirs. I made my decision then. If they wanted to pretend to be poor, I'd show them what poor really looked like. And if they were so certain about their inheritance, well, perhaps it was time they learned that nothing in life is guaranteed. Christmas was 3 weeks away. I had preparations to make. The first step in my plan required a visit to my lawyer, Benjamin Frost. Ben had been handling my affairs since Margaret passed. A sharp-minded man in his 60s who'd seen enough of human nature to never be surprised by anything. His office was in downtown Burlington, on the 3rd floor of a restored brick building that overlooked Lake Champlain. "Harold," he greeted me, shaking my hand warmly. "What brings you in today? Finally ready to update that will of yours?" "In a way," I said, settling into the leather chair across from his desk. "But first, I need to know about my options for charitable giving." Ben's eyebrows rose slightly. "Charitable giving? That's wonderful, Harold. Are we talking about a specific amount or organization?" All of it, I said simply. Every penny, except for what I need to live on for whatever time I have left. The room went quiet except for the ticking of Ben's antique clock. He leaned back in his chair, studying me with those intelligent gray eyes of his. Harold, that's roughly $12 million we're talking about. Are you certain about this? I've never been more certain of anything in my life, Ben. I explained everything then. The discovery of David's deception, the years of lies, the investigation results. Ben listened without interrupting, occasionally jotting notes on his legal pad. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. I'm sorry, Harold. No parent should have to discover something like this. I don't want pity, Ben. I want papers drawn up. I want to establish a charitable trust, irrevocable, with distributions to begin immediately after Christmas. Children's Hospital of Burlington, the Veterans Foundation, the Margaret Winchester Memorial Fund for Cancer Research. I have a list here. I handed him the paper I'd carefully prepared, listing 15 organizations that Margaret and I had supported over the years. Ben reviewed it, nodding slowly. This is all perfectly legal and straightforward, Harold. But I have to ask, have you considered talking to David first? Perhaps there's been some misunderstanding? The only misunderstanding was mine, believing I raised a son with integrity. The words came out harsher than I intended. Just prepare the papers, Ben. I want them ready to sign by December 23rd. And your current will? Leave it as is for now. David is still the primary beneficiary. I want him to believe that until the moment he learns otherwise. Ben nodded slowly. I'll have everything prepared. Harold, what exactly are you planning? A Christmas dinner they'll never forget. The next phase of my plan was more elaborate and required the help of someone I'd known since childhood, Eddie Murphy, who ran Murphy's Steakhouse where I took my weekly dinners. Eddie and I had grown up on the same street, played football together in high school, and remained friends even as our lives took different paths. I found Eddie in the restaurant's kitchen on a Tuesday afternoon, the quiet period between lunch and dinner service. He was preparing marinades, his thick hands working with the practiced efficiency of 40 years in the restaurant business. Harold, he boomed, wiping his hands on his apron. It's not Thursday. You changing your routine on me? I need a favor, Eddie, a strange one. Strange favors are my specialty. Remember when I helped you propose to Margaret with that flash mob before flash mobs were even a thing? I smiled at the memory, then explained what I needed. Eddie listened, his expression growing more serious as I talked. You want to borrow my clothes? Harold, I haven't been your size since Reagan was president. That's the point. I need clothes that don't fit, that look like they came from a thrift store. Worn, patched, maybe a bit dirty. I need to look like someone who's been living on the streets. Eddie studied me for a long moment. This about David? I'd never told Eddie about the money I gave David, but Eddie was observant. He'd seen David and Jennifer at the restaurant several times, noticed their expensive clothes and watches while I mentioned their financial struggles. It's about teaching a lesson. Well, lessons are important, Eddie said finally. My cousin Sal works at the shelter downtown. I could probably get you a whole outfit, authentic as it gets. But Harold, are you sure about this? They think I'm old and foolish, Eddie. Maybe they're half right, but I'm not dead yet, and I'm not as foolish as they believe. Eddie clapped me on the shoulder. Margaret would have gotten a kick out of this. She would have talked me out of it. Probably. But she's not here, and someone needs to knock some sense into that boy of yours. The clothes arrived 2 days later in a garbage bag. A threadbare army surplus jacket 2 sizes too large, pants held up with a rope belt, boots with holes in the soles, a shirt that might have once been white but was now a yellowish gray, and a wool cap that smelled faintly of mothballs and desperation. I tried them on in my bedroom, looking at myself in the full-length mirror. The transformation was shocking. The oversized clothes hung off my frame, making me look gaunt and frail. The jacket, with its torn pockets and missing buttons, completed the image of a man who'd lost everything. I practiced hunching my shoulders, shuffling my walk, the movements of someone who'd been beaten down by life. But the clothes were only part of the plan. The real preparation was psychological. I spent hours thinking about what I would say, how I would act, how far I was willing to take this deception. Unlike David, I wasn't a natural liar, Every instinct in me rebelled against deceiving anyone, even those who'd deceived me. Yet every time I wavered, I remembered that recorded conversation. He's so gullible. It's all coming to us eventually anyway. On December 15th, I received the expected call from Jennifer. Dad, we were just finalizing Christmas dinner plans. You're coming, right? We're doing the full traditional spread, turkey, ham, all your favorites. Her voice was warm, loving, the perfect daughter-in-law. If I hadn't known better, I would have been touched by her enthusiasm. Of course I'll be there, I said. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Wonderful. Come around 4. The kids are so excited to see you. Tyler's bringing his girlfriend, and Madison has some big news about an internship she landed. That sounds lovely, Jennifer. Oh, and Dad? Don't bring anything except yourself. We have everything covered. This year, we just want you to relax and enjoy. After I hung up, I wondered what they'd already bought with the money they assumed I'd give them for Christmas. Another vacation? More designer clothes? Perhaps they'd already spent my January check in their minds, already allocated my money to their wants disguised as needs. The next week passed slowly. I made my regular visits to Murphy's, where Eddie would give me knowing looks but say nothing. I signed the papers at Ben's office, officially establishing the charitable trust that would distribute my wealth. I wrote letters to each organization explaining the gifts and why I'd chosen them. I also wrote one more letter, this one to David, to be delivered after Christmas. 3 days before Christmas, I did something I hadn't done in years. I visited Margaret's grave. The cemetery was covered in fresh snow, and I had to brush it off her headstone to read the inscription, Margaret Ann Winchester, beloved wife and mother, 1942 to 2005. I know you wouldn't approve, Maggie, I said to the stone, my breath forming clouds in the cold air. You always saw the best in people, especially David. You'd tell me to forgive, to understand, to remember that he's our son. The wind whistled through the bare trees, and for a moment I could almost hear her voice, gentle and reproving. But you never had to see what he became, I continued. You never had to know that our son, the boy we raised, values money more than truth, comfort more than character. Maybe it's my fault. Maybe I gave him too much, made life too easy. But Maggie, I can't let this stand. I can't pretend everything's fine while they wait for me to die. I placed a single red rose on the grave, Margaret's favorite, then walked back to my car. The Salvation Army bell ringer at the cemetery entrance was bundled against the cold, his red kettle hanging from a tripod. I dropped a $100 bill in the kettle. Merry Christmas, sir, the man said, his eyes widening at the bill. God bless you. Merry Christmas, I replied, thinking about how many people genuinely needed help while my son pretended to be one of them. On December 23rd, Christmas Eve, I made my final preparations. I practiced my story one more time, the tale I would tell at Christmas dinner. I'd dirty my hands with soil from the garden, let my fingernails grow untrimmed, stopped shaving to achieve the perfect amount of stubble. I even practiced eating, remembering how the truly hungry attack their food, with none of the casual indifference of those who've never wondered where their next meal would come from. That night, I stood in my study, looking at the family photos that lined the shelves. There was David at 5, grinning with his first lost tooth, David at 18, in his cap and gown at high school graduation, David and Jennifer's wedding photo, both of them radiant with joy, the grandchildren as babies, as toddlers, at their own graduations. Had there been signs I'd missed, moments when I should have seen what they were becoming, or had the greed come later, creeping in like a disease, corrupting them slowly until lying to me became as natural as breathing? I picked up the most recent photo, taken just last year at what they had called a simple family dinner at their house. In it, I stood between David and Jennifer, the grandchildren flanking us, everyone smiling. I now noticed details I'd missed before. Jennifer's designer dress, David's expensive watch, Madison's professional manicure, Tyler's trendy haircut that probably cost more than most people's weekly groceries, all funded by my monthly checks, by the fiction of their poverty. I set the photo face down. Tomorrow was Christmas Eve, and I would spend it alone, as I had for years since Margaret died. But Christmas Day would be different. Christmas Day, I would give my family a gift they'd never forget, the truth, wrapped in rags and delivered with a side of consequences. The snow began falling again outside my window, heavy flakes that would blanket Burlington in white by morning. Somewhere across town, David and Jennifer were probably preparing for their elaborate Christmas dinner, never suspecting that their father, their personal ATM, was about to malfunction in the most spectacular way possible. Christmas Eve arrived with a bitter cold that seemed fitting for my mood. I woke at 5 in the morning, unable to sleep, and made myself a simple breakfast of toast and black coffee. Outside my kitchen window, Burlington lay under a thick blanket of snow, pristine and peaceful, a stark contrast to the turmoil in my chest. I'd told David and Jennifer I would be spending Christmas Eve quietly at home, which was true enough. What I didn't tell them was how I would spend it, making final preparations for my transformation and wrestling with the last shreds of doubt about my plan. The raggedy clothes hung in my spare bedroom like a ghost of poverty, waiting. I'd added more authentic touches over the past day, rubbing dirt into the fabric, creating tears that looked worn rather than deliberate, even adding a faint smell of must and despair using water from an old flower vase. It was method acting of the most personal kind, becoming someone I might have been if life had taken different turns. At noon, my phone rang. Tyler's name appeared on the screen. "Grandpa, Merry Christmas Eve." "Hello, Tyler. Merry Christmas Eve to you too. Just wanted to call and say I'm excited to see you tomorrow. I want you to meet Ashley. She's amazing, Grandpa. I think you'll really like her." His voice was warm, genuine. Of all the family, Tyler seemed the least changed by the money, though I'd noticed he never refused it either. The VIP festival passes, the Dubai trip, the fraternity presidency built on dues I'd unknowingly funded, he'd taken it all without question. "I'm looking forward to meeting her," I said. "Hey, Grandpa," I wanted to ask. "Mom and Dad have been acting weird lately. They keep talking about money stuff when they think I'm not listening. Is everything okay? I mean, with you?" An interesting question. Were they worried I'd discovered their deception? Or was this about something else? "I'm fine, Tyler. Why do you ask?" "I don't know. Dad mentioned something about your checks being late this month, and Mom got really upset. They had this whispered argument about credit card bills. I just wanted to make sure you were doing okay, health-wise and everything." So that was it. I'd deliberately delayed December's check, sent it just yesterday instead of on the 1st as usual. A small test, and apparently it had caused anxiety in the household that supposedly didn't need my money. "I'm perfectly healthy, Tyler. Sometimes banks are slow during the holidays." "Oh, good. That's a relief. Well, see you tomorrow, Grandpa. Love you." "Love you too, Tyler." After I hung up, I sat staring at the phone. Love. The word felt hollow now, infected by the knowledge of their deception. Did any of them truly love me, or did they love what I provided? Would Tyler still call if the check stopped? Would Madison still send her thank you cards? Would David still visit? I was about to find out. At 2 o'clock, I drove to the bank to handle one final piece of business. The manager, Patricia Holbrook, met me personally. When you have $12 million in various accounts, you get personal service. "Mr. Winchester, how can I help you today?" "I need to make a large cash withdrawal," I said. $20,000. Patricia's expression didn't change. She was too professional for that, but I saw the slight widening of her eyes. "Of course, Mr. Winchester. May I ask if you'd prefer a cashier's check? It would be safer than carrying cash." "No, I need cash. Hundreds will be fine." She didn't argue further, though I could see her concern. 20 minutes later, I left with $200 bills in a manila envelope. This was the final piece of my plan, the twist within the twist. I spent the rest of Christmas Eve in my study, reading. I'd pulled out Margaret's favorite Christmas book, A Christmas Carol, by Dickens. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, playing Scrooge in reverse, a man about to show his family what their greed had wrought. But unlike Scrooge, I wouldn't be the one learning a lesson about generosity. As evening fell, I heard carolers outside, their voices carrying through the cold air. Silent night drifted through my windows, and I found myself thinking about Christmases past, the year David was 7, and we'd stayed up until midnight assembling his bicycle. The Christmas Margaret had surprised me with a watch I still wore. The last Christmas we'd all spent together before the cancer took her, when she'd insisted on cooking despite barely being able to stand, determined to give us one more perfect holiday. What would she think of what I was about to do? I knew the answer. She'd be disappointed. Not in David, she never could be disappointed in David, but in me, for choosing confrontation over forgiveness, for picking drama over dialogue. But you always saw the best in people, Maggie, I said to her photograph on my desk. Sometimes, though, people need to see the worst in themselves. At 8 o'clock, Eddie Murphy called. Harold, you sure about tomorrow? It's not too late to change your mind. Did you ever wonder, Eddie, what kind of person raises a liar? What kind of father produces a son who can look him in the eye and pretend to be poor while living in luxury? Harold, you're a good man. Whatever David became, it's not on you. Isn't it? I gave him everything. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe if I'd made him work, struggle, fight for something, anything, he'd have learned the value of honesty. You can't torture yourself with maybes, Harold. You did your best. Did I? Or did I just write checks and call it love? Eddie was quiet for a moment. You want me to come with you tomorrow for moral support? No, but thank you. This is something I need to do alone. Well, if you need anything afterward, you know where to find me. The restaurant's closed tomorrow, but I'll be home. After we hung up, I made myself a light dinner, soup and crackers, practicing eating like someone who'd been hungry for days. I needed to remember to pocket some rolls at dinner tomorrow, to save food like someone who didn't know where their next meal would come from. The small details would sell the deception. At 10 o'clock, I took a long, hot shower, knowing it would be my last for 2 days. I wouldn't shower again until after Christmas dinner, wanting to add that authentic touch of someone who hadn't had access to proper hygiene. I trimmed my nails one last time, then rubbed dirt under them. I messed my hair and didn't comb it back. Before bed, I wrote one more letter, this one to Tyler and Madison. They deserved an explanation separate from their parents, a chance to understand why their grandfather had done what he was about to do. I sealed it in an envelope marked, "To be opened," December 26th, and left it on my desk, where Ben Frost would find it when he came to execute the trust documents. I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, running through my plan one more time. I would arrive at 4 o'clock as expected, but not in my Buick. I'd take a taxi to within 3 blocks of their house, then walk the rest of the way, shuffling through the snow in my broken boots. I'd ring the doorbell like any other guest, and when they opened the door, the performance would begin. Sleep, when it finally came, was fitful and filled with dreams. I saw Margaret shaking her head sadly. I saw David as a child, asking why Santa hadn't brought him the expensive toy he'd wanted, saw myself rushing out on Christmas morning to find one, to fix his disappointment with money. I saw Jennifer counting $100 bills while laughing. I saw Tyler and Madison, their faces shifting between love and greed, reaching out their hands, but whether for a hug or a handout, I couldn't tell. I woke on Christmas morning to brilliant sunshine reflecting off the snow, making the world gleam like a diamond. It was beautiful and cold, the thermometer reading 15 degrees. Perfect weather for my costume. No one would question the layers of raggedy clothes, the hunched posture of someone trying to stay warm. I made myself coffee, but no breakfast. My stomach was too knotted to eat, and besides, I needed to be hungry, really hungry. It would make the performance more authentic when I fell upon their food like a starving man. At noon, I began my transformation. First, the clothes, the stained thermal underwear, the ripped pants with the rope belt, the yellowed shirt, the army surplus jacket. Each piece added another layer to my disguise, another step away from Harold Winchester, comfortable retiree, toward Harold the forgotten, Harold the discarded. I practiced my shuffle in front of the mirror, perfected the tremor in my hands, the slight confusion in my eyes that suggested hunger and cold had taken their toll. I was method acting for an audience that had been performing for me for 15 years. Turnabout, as they say, is fair play. At 2 o'clock, I ate a single apple, just enough to keep me functioning, but not enough to dull the edge of hunger. I wanted to feel what real desperation felt like, to understand the gnawing emptiness that drives people to do things they'd never normally consider. At 3 o'clock, I called the taxi, giving them an address 3 blocks from David's house. The dispatcher said the car would arrive in 15 minutes. I sat in my ragged clothes, the envelope of cash tucked deep in my jacket pocket, along with a small digital recorder I'd decided to bring at the last moment. If nothing else, I wanted a record of what was about to happen, proof that I hadn't imagined or exaggerated their response. The taxi arrived at 3:20, the driver doing a double take when he saw me. "You sure you got money for this ride, old-timer?" he asked, not unkindly but with obvious concern. I pulled out a 20, making sure my hands shook as I showed it to him. "Yes, sir." Christmas dinner with family? His expression softened. "Well, hop in then. Let's get you there." As we drove through Burlington's decorated streets, past houses strung with lights and yards filled with inflatable Santas, I thought about all the Christmases I'd spent believing I was helping my struggling son. Every check I'd written had been an act of love, or so I'd thought. Now I knew they'd been transactions in a long con, a slow-motion theft disguised as gratitude. "Here we are," the driver said, pulling up to the corner I'd specified. "You sure this is right?" "There's nothing here but houses." "My family lives just up the street," I said, giving him $30. "Keep the change." "Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas to you too, sir. Stay warm out there." I stood on the corner as the taxi drove away, the cold immediately biting through my thin jacket. 3 blocks to walk, 3 blocks to shuffle through the snow in boots with holes, feeling the wet cold seep through to my socks. 3 blocks to prepare for the performance of my lifetime. The sun was already beginning to set, painting the sky orange and pink. Christmas lights twinkled on every house, and I could see families through windows, gathered around trees, opening presents, laughing. Normal families, perhaps, honest families, or maybe every house hid its own deceptions, its own elaborate performances. I began walking, shuffling really, toward David's house. With each step, I became more of the character I was playing. Harold Winchester, successful businessman, was gone. In his place shuffled an old man who'd lost everything, who'd come to his son's house on Christmas Day with nothing but the clothes on his back and a story of loss that was, in its own way, absolutely true. David's house came into view, lit up like a department store display. White lights wrapped every tree and bush. An elaborate nativity scene dominated the front yard. Through the dining room window, I could see them moving around, preparing the table. Jennifer's sister was there, and her husband. Tyler's girlfriend, a pretty blonde, was helping Madison set out plates. And there was David, my son, carving what looked like an enormous turkey, laughing at something someone had said. He looked happy, prosperous, successful. He looked like what he'd been pretending not to be for 15 years. I stood at the end of their driveway for a moment, gathering courage. The envelope of cash felt heavy in my pocket. The recorder was already running, muffled but functional. The sun continued its descent, and the Christmas lights seemed to grow brighter in the gathering dusk. This was it. The moment of truth, or perhaps more accurately, the moment of lies revealed. I shuffled up the driveway, my broken boots scraping against the concrete they'd recently had resurfaced, another expense they couldn't afford, according to their stories. I climbed the steps to their front door, noting the new Ring doorbell camera that would capture my arrival. I raised my dirty, trembling hand and rang the doorbell. Inside, I heard movement, voices calling out, footsteps approaching. The door began to open, and I saw David's face appear, his expression shifting from welcome to confusion to something else entirely as he took in my appearance. "Dad?" he said, his voice uncertain. What happened to you?" "David," I said, letting my voice crack slightly, "I'm sorry to come like this. I didn't have anywhere else to go." My son stood frozen in the doorway, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Behind him I could hear Jennifer's voice calling out, "Who is it, honey?" It's Dad," David managed to say, still staring at me as if I were a ghost. Jennifer appeared beside him, her face perfectly made up, wearing a burgundy dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her expression went from curious to horrified in the span of a heartbeat. "Harold, oh my God, what happened to you?" She reached out instinctively, then pulled her hand back as if afraid to touch me. "There was a fire," I said, shuffling my feet, making sure snow fell from my broken boots onto their pristine welcome mat. "2 days ago, I lost everything. The house, everything in it. I've been at the shelter, but they closed for Christmas dinner, and I remembered you said to come at 4. A fire? David's voice pitched higher. Dad, why didn't you call us? Phone was in the house, haven't been thinking straight. The smoke, the shock. I let my words trail off, swaying slightly on my feet as if exhaustion might topple me at any moment. Dear God, Jennifer breathed. Come in, come in. You must be freezing. They stepped aside, and I shuffled into their foyer, leaving wet, dirty footprints on their cream-colored carpet. I could see Jennifer's eyes tracking the mud, but she said nothing. The warmth of the house hit me, and I didn't have to fake the way my body shuddered in response. Grandpa. Tyler and Madison had appeared from the dining room, both dressed in what young people probably considered casual, but what I recognized as designer labels. Tyler's girlfriend hung back, clearly unsure what was happening. What's wrong with Grandpa? Madison asked, her voice small, uncertain. There was a fire at his house, David said, still sounding dazed. He lost everything. Everything? Tyler stepped forward. Grandpa, are you okay? Are you hurt? I raised a trembling hand to my forehead. Just tired, son. So tired and hungry. Haven't eaten since yesterday morning. The shelter ran out of food before I got to the front of the line. That did it. The entire family sprung into action like someone had flipped a switch. Jennifer ushered me toward the living room while barking orders. Madison, get some soup heating. Tyler, find some of your father's clothes. David, call the insurance company. It's Christmas, David said weakly. They won't be open. Then we'll call first thing tomorrow, Jennifer said firmly, her arm around me but carefully, as if poverty might be contagious. Harold, sit here by the fire. Madison, where's that soup? I sank into their leather armchair, new since my last visit, and let out a long, shuddering sigh. The warmth of their gas fireplace washed over me, and I closed my eyes for a moment, listening to the family scramble around me. Here, Mr. Winchester, Tyler's girlfriend appeared with a glass of water. You must be dehydrated. I took it with shaking hands, deliberately spilling a little on my already stained shirt. Thank you, dear. You must be Ashley. Tyler's told me about you. She smiled uncertainly. Yes, sir. I'm so sorry about your house. Jennifer's sister, Carol, and her husband, Robert, had emerged from the dining room. Carol's expression was one of barely concealed disgust as she took in my appearance. Robert just looked uncomfortable, like he'd wandered into a play and didn't know his lines. My God, Harold, Carol said. You look like a homeless person. Carol, Jennifer hissed. I suppose I am now, I said quietly. Homeless, that is. The word hung in the air like a bad smell. Homeless. Their successful father, their eternal benefactor, homeless. Madison returned with a bowl of soup. Lobster bisque, I noted with bitter irony. Nothing but the best for their struggling household. I took it eagerly, letting my hands shake enough that I spilled some on myself, then ate with the desperation of the truly hungry, barely pausing to breathe between spoonfuls. Slow down, Dad, David said, finally finding his voice. You'll make yourself sick. I looked up at him with what I hoped appeared to be confused desperation. I'm sorry, it's been so long since I've had hot food. 2 days? Jennifer asked, her perfectly sculpted eyebrows furrowing. The fire was 2 days ago? December 23rd, I confirmed. Early morning. The fire department said it was electrical, old wiring in the walls. The whole second floor went up before they could stop it. But your things, Madison said, settling onto the arm of my chair with the casual grace of someone who'd never wanted for anything. Your photos, all of Grandma's things. I closed my eyes, didn't have to fake the pain that crossed my face. All gone, every picture, every memory, her jewelry, her books, the quilt her mother made. Gone. The insurance will cover it, David said quickly, too quickly. You had insurance, right? I let silence stretch for a moment, finishing my soup, scraping the bowl clean like someone who didn't know when they'd eat again. There's a problem with the insurance, I said finally. The room went very still. Even the Christmas music playing softly in the background seemed to pause. What kind of problem? David's voice had an edge to it now. I'd been having some money troubles lately. Had to make choices about what bills to pay. Money troubles? Jennifer's voice climbed an octave. Harold, you're You're wealthy." I laughed, a bitter sound that seemed to surprise even me. Was wealthy. But after the market downturn last year, some bad investments, some medical bills the insurance wouldn't cover, and I've been helping out a friend's family. Their son has leukemia. I've been paying for his treatments. "You've been giving money to strangers?" David asked, and there was something in his voice that might have been panic. "Not strangers. Frank Garrison's family. You remember Frank, David? He worked with me for 30 years. When his grandson got sick, how could I not help? The treatments cost a fortune, but what's money compared to a child's life?" I watched David's face carefully. The mention of giving money to another family had hit him like a physical blow. His jaw was clenched, his hands fisted at his sides. "How much?" he asked. "How much have you been giving them?" "Does it matter?" I responded. "The boy's in remission now. That's what matters." "But your insurance payments," Jennifer pressed. "Surely you didn't skip those." "I was 2 months behind," I admitted, looking at my dirty hands. "They sent notices, but I thought I had time. I was going to catch up after the new year when some bonds matured. But now—" "Jesus Christ," David muttered, running his hand through his hair, his perfectly styled, recently trimmed hair. "Dad, how could you be so irresponsible?" "David!" Jennifer shot him a warning look. "I'm sorry," I said, making my voice small. "I know I've made mistakes. I never thought something like this would happen. And now, I have nothing. My bank accounts are nearly empty from helping the Garrisons. The house is gone, and I'm too old to start over." Tyler knelt beside my chair, and for a moment I saw genuine concern in his eyes. "Grandpa, you'll stay with us, right, Dad? Grandpa will stay here?" David and Jennifer exchanged a look that spoke volumes. In that silent communication, I saw their real feelings: panic, calculation, dismay. The gravy train wasn't just stopping, it was derailing spectacularly. "Of course," Jennifer said, but her smile was forced. "Of course you'll stay here, Harold, for as long as you need." "I don't want to be a burden," I said, reaching into my pocket. "I do have this. It's all I could grab from the safe before the smoke got too thick." I pulled out the envelope, opening it to reveal the stack of $100 bills, $20,000 in cash, slightly singed around the edges where I'd carefully burned them with a lighter that morning. The room went silent again, all eyes fixed on the money. $20,000, I said. "It's all I have left in the world. I want you to have it, David, for taking me in, for all the times you've been there for me." David's hand reached out automatically, then stopped. "Dad, I can't take your last $20,000. "Please," I said, pressing the envelope into his hands. "What am I going to do with it? I need a place to stay more than I need money. And you've got your own financial struggles. This could help." I watched David wrestle with himself. The greed in his eyes battled with the need to maintain his facade. The envelope trembled in his hands. "We should put this in the bank for you," Jennifer said, but her eyes were also fixed on the cash. "Keep it safe until you get back on your feet." "No banks," I said firmly. "I don't trust them anymore. Lost too much in their bad investments. You keep it. Use what you need for my expenses, food, whatever. I just need a roof over my head and maybe," I gestured at my clothes, "something clean to wear." Carol cleared her throat. "Perhaps we should call someone? The insurance company must have an emergency line, or there are agencies that help with this sort of thing." "On Christmas?" Robert finally spoke. "Nothing's open on Christmas." "Tomorrow, then," Carol said, her tone suggesting she wanted this problem solved and Harold Winchester out of her sister's house as soon as possible. "For tonight, let's just get Dad comfortable," David said, the envelope still in his hands. "Tyler, did you find those clothes?" "Yeah, got some stuff that might fit." Tyler disappeared and returned with an armful of clothing. Polo shirts with designer logos, khaki pants with sharp creases. Even David's casual clothes screamed money. "You can shower in the guest bathroom," Jennifer said. "Get cleaned up before dinner. We'll set another place at the table." "Thank you," I said, struggling to my feet, making sure to grimace as if everything hurt. "You're very kind to a foolish old man." "You're not foolish, Grandpa," Madison said, but her voice lacked conviction. I could see her doing the math in her head. If Grandpa was broke, what did that mean for her inheritance, for the steady flow of birthday and Christmas checks? I shuffled toward the bathroom, Tyler helping me with the clothes, As I passed the dining room, I saw their Christmas table. China, crystal, silver, a centerpiece that must have cost hundreds. The turkey David had been carving sat golden and perfect, surrounded by dishes that belonged in a luxury magazine spread. All this while claiming they could barely make ends meet. In the bathroom, I stared at myself in the mirror. The man looking back was unrecognizable, dirty, disheveled, defeated. I'd become the grandfather they'd been pretending I was helping them avoid becoming. The irony was perfect and terrible. I turned on the shower but didn't get in immediately. Instead, I pressed my ear to the door, listening. The family had moved to the kitchen, but their voices carried. 20,000 in cash? That was Carol. Who keeps 20,000 in cash in their house? Dad's always been eccentric about money, David replied. But this, Christ, if he's really broke. The checks will stop, Jennifer said flatly. No more monthly payments. We can manage, David said, but he didn't sound convincing. We've been planning for this anyway. Planning for him to die, not for him to be homeless. Jennifer's voice was sharp. And what about Tyler's graduation trip? Madison's apartment next year? We have savings, David said. We have debt, Jennifer corrected. The Tesla payment, the country club dues, the credit cards. We've been counting on that inheritance. Keep your voice down, David hissed. He'll hear you. He's in the shower. Besides, what does it matter now? There's nothing to inherit. And burned house with no insurance and $20,000. Maybe he's not telling us everything, Tyler suggested. Maybe there's more money somewhere. Your grandfather's not the type to hide money, David said. He's too straightforward for that. If only they knew how wrong they were. I let the shower run for 15 minutes without getting in, instead using a washcloth to clean just my face and hands, enough to be presentable but still maintaining the appearance of someone who'd been through trauma. I wet my hair and combed it roughly, leaving it disheveled. David's clothes hung loose on me, making me look even more diminished than before. When I emerged from the bathroom, the family had reassembled in the dining room. They'd set a place for me at the far end of the table, away from the center of action, the seat usually reserved for children or unwanted guests. I noticed they'd used their everyday plates for my setting, not the fine china everyone else had. Feeling better, Dad? David asked, though his smile didn't reach his eyes. Much better, thank you. I shuffled to my assigned seat, noting how Tyler's girlfriend, Ashley, watched me with genuine sympathy while the others seemed to be avoiding direct eye contact. The table was laden with excess, not just turkey, but also a honey-glazed ham, 5 different sides, fresh rolls, 2 kinds of cranberry sauce. This was the feast of people who wanted to display wealth, not simply enjoy a meal. Should we say grace? Madison suggested, which surprised me. We'd never been a particularly religious family. That's a lovely idea, Jennifer said, reaching for the hands on either side of her. We formed a circle, and I noticed how Carol barely touched my hand, as if poverty might transfer through skin contact. Dear Lord, David began, we thank you for this meal, for family, and for bringing Dad to us safely in his time of need. We pray for guidance in the days ahead, and for resolution to his situation. Amen. Amen, we echoed, though the word tasted bitter in my mouth, praying for resolution to my situation, as if I were a problem to be solved rather than a father to be helped. As plates were passed and food distributed, I made sure to heap my plate high, taking seconds before others had finished their firsts. I ate with visible hunger, occasionally pocketing a roll when I thought no one was looking, though I knew Jennifer saw me do it. Her lips tightened each time. So, Ashley, I said between mouthfuls, Tyler tells me you're studying psychology. That must be fascinating. Ashley smiled warmly. It is, Mr. Winchester. I'm particularly interested in family dynamics and how financial stress impacts relationships. The timing of her comment was so perfect I almost laughed. Several family members shifted uncomfortably. Financial stress, Carol said with a forced laugh. Well, that's something we all understand, isn't it? These are tough times for everyone. Are they? I asked innocently. You and Robert seem to be doing well. That's a beautiful new car in the driveway. The Mercedes? It's leased, Robert said quickly. Just keeping up appearances for my real estate business. You know how it is. I used to, I said, letting sadness creep into my voice. Now I suppose I'll learn how the other half lives. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Madison broke it by clearing her throat. "I have an announcement," she said, trying to inject brightness into her voice. "I got the internship at the design firm in New York." "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Jennifer said, though her enthusiasm seemed forced. "When do you start?" I asked. "June, right after graduation. They're even providing housing assistance, though I'll still need to supplement it. New York is so expensive." "I'm sure your parents will help," I said, watching David's jaw clench. We'll figure something out," David said. "I wish I could help," I said, looking down at my plate. "I used to love being able to support your dreams. Remember when I paid for your art classes in high school, Madison? Your grandmother, would have been so proud to see you pursuing design." Madison's eyes welled slightly. "You always supported me, Grandpa." "And Tyler," I continued, "remember when I helped with your fraternity dues? You told me it was important for networking, for your future. I was so happy to help." Tyler shifted uncomfortably. "You've always been generous, Grandpa." "Too generous, apparently," Carol muttered, earning a sharp look from Jennifer. "What about the Garrison boy?" Ashley asked innocently. "The one with leukemia? Is he doing better?" I appreciated her unknowing assistance in my deception. "Much better. He's in remission. The doctors say he has an excellent prognosis now." "How much did those treatments cost?" David asked, unable to keep the edge from his voice. "Over the past 2 years? About $300,000. Jennifer's fork clattered against her plate. $300,000, Dad, that's insane." "Is it?" I asked mildly. "What's insane about saving a child's life? Would you have had me let him die because the number was too high?" "But it wasn't your responsibility," David said. "They should have found another way." "There was no other way. The insurance companies called it experimental treatment, wouldn't cover it. The family had already mortgaged everything. I had the money, or I thought I did. How could I look at myself in the mirror if I'd let that boy die for want of money I had sitting in accounts?" "Because now you have nothing?" David's voice rose, and the mask slipped completely for a moment, showing the angry, entitled man beneath. "You gave away your security, your future, our—" He caught himself, but too late. "Your what?" I asked quietly. Your safety net," David finished lamely. "I'm just worried about you, Dad." "I appreciate that, son. But I'd make the same choice again. That boy will grow up, go to college, have a family of his own someday. That's worth more than money." "Easy to say when you're not the one who has to deal with the consequences," Jennifer said under her breath, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "Jennifer," Madison said, shocked. "What?" "I'm sorry, but someone has to be practical here. Harold is 78 years old, now homeless and penniless, except for $20,000. Who's going to take care of him? House him? Feed him? Pay for his medications, his doctor visits? That falls on us now." "I don't want to be a burden," I said, starting to rise from my chair. "Perhaps I should go. I'm sure the shelter will—" "Sit down, Dad," David said firmly. "You're not going to any shelter. Jennifer's just stressed. It's been a shock for all of us." "A shock," I repeated. "Yes, I suppose it has been." Tyler's girlfriend had been watching this exchange with increasing discomfort. "Maybe we should talk about something else? It's Christmas, after all." "You're right," Jennifer said, composing herself. "Let's talk about happier things. Carol, tell us about your trip to Aspen last month." As Carol launched into a detailed description of their ski vacation, the private lessons, the 5-star lodge, the spa treatments, I continued eating mechanically, observing the family dynamics. The grandchildren kept shooting me concerned looks. Ashley seemed increasingly uncomfortable with the family she'd been brought to meet. Carol and Robert were clearly calculating how quickly they could leave. And David and Jennifer were having an entire conversation with their eyes, a silent argument about money and responsibility and the crushing disappointment of a Christmas gift that had turned into a Christmas burden. "Grandpa," Tyler said suddenly, "tell us about when you started your business. You've never really talked about the early days." I looked at him, surprised by what seemed like genuine interest. "It was a different time," I said. "Your grandmother and I had $500 between us. I worked 3 jobs while getting the first store started. We lived on bologna sandwiches and hope." "And you built it into a chain," Tyler said. "That's amazing." It took 30 years of 16-hour days, I said. Your grandmother kept the books at night after working her own job during the day. We didn't take a vacation for the first 10 years, but we built something real, something that lasted. Until you sold it, David said, and there was accusation in his tone. Yes, I sold it. After your mother died, I couldn't. The joy was gone, and I thought the money would give me freedom to help the people I loved. All that work just to give it away to strangers, Jennifer said. Not strangers, I corrected. Frank Garrison worked with me for 30 years. He was there when we opened the second store, the 5th, the 10th. He was family in every way that mattered. When his grandson got sick, I shrugged. What else could I do? You could have thought about your actual family, David muttered. The words hung in the air like a slap. Even Carol looked shocked. David, Jennifer warned. No, I'm sorry, but it needs to be said, David continued, the dam finally breaking. Dad, you had millions. Millions. And you gave it away to everyone but us. We've been struggling for years, barely keeping our heads above water, and you throw $300,000 at some kid you've never even met? I stared at my son, letting him see the hurt in my eyes, hurt that didn't require any acting. I've given you money every month for 15 years, David. $60,000 a year, every year. How much more did you need? The silence that followed was deafening. David's face went red, then white. Jennifer's mouth opened and closed. The grandchildren stared at their parents in shock. $60,000 a year, Tyler said slowly. You've been getting $60,000 a year from Grandpa? For medical bills, Jennifer said quickly, and the mortgage and... We don't have medical bills, Madison said, her voice small. We haven't for years, and you told me the house was paid off when I asked about getting a loan for college. The family was fracturing before my eyes, truth seeping through the cracks like water through a broken dam. You said we were broke, Tyler said to his parents, his voice rising. You said we couldn't afford spring break, that I had to get a job to help out. But you were getting $60,000 a year. It's complicated, David said weakly. Plus the cars I bought you, I added quietly. And the vacation money, and the emergency funds for repairs that always seemed to come up. Ashley was staring at Tyler as if seeing him for the first time. You told me your family was middle class, struggling to get by. I thought we were, Tyler protested. The Tesla in the garage suggests otherwise, I said mildly. There's a Tesla. Madison's voice was sharp now. You have a Tesla? You told me we couldn't afford to help with my student loans, that I'd have to manage them myself. The Christmas dinner was bright, dissolving into chaos, years of lies unraveling with each revelation. Carol and Robert were edging toward the door, clearly wanting no part of this family drama. We should go, Carol announced. This is a family matter. Yes, run away, Jennifer snapped at her sister. That's what you always do when things get difficult. Excuse me, Carol's voice went cold. I'm not the one who's been lying to everyone for years. You knew, Jennifer accused. You knew we were getting money from Harold, and you never said anything. I suspected, Carol admitted, but it wasn't my business. Although now that it's all coming out, Jennifer, how do you afford those weekly spa treatments on a supposed teacher's salary? I teach at a private school. Part-time, Carol shot back. 3 days a week. I've seen your Instagram, Jennifer, the shopping trips, the lunches at expensive restaurants. Did you really think no one would notice? I sat back in my chair, watching the family I thought I knew tear itself apart. The carefully constructed facades were crumbling, revealing the rot beneath, and I'd barely had to do anything. Just show up poor and let their own greed and guilt do the rest. Stop it, Madison shouted suddenly, tears streaming down her face. Just stop. It's Christmas, and Grandpa's lost everything, and all you can do is fight about money? Everyone turned to look at her, then at me. I sat there in David's ill-fitting clothes, the pockets of which bulged with dinner rolls I'd hoarded, looking every inch the broken poor old man they'd feared becoming. Madison's right, I said quietly. I'm sorry. I've ruined your Christmas. I should go. Where? Tyler asked, his voice breaking. Where would you go, Grandpa? I'll figure something out. I always have. No, Tyler said firmly, standing up. No, you're staying here. I don't care about the money or who lied about what. You're my grandfather, and you're not going to some shelter on Christmas." He looked at his parents with something approaching disgust. "You can figure out your lies and your money problems tomorrow. Tonight, Grandpa stays." The rest of Christmas dinner passed in strained silence. Carol and Robert left immediately after Tyler's outburst, Carol hugging me stiffly and whispering, "I'm sorry about your house, Harold," before escaping to their Mercedes. Ashley excused herself shortly after, telling Tyler she needed time to process everything. The look she gave him before leaving suggested their relationship might not survive this Christmas revelation. Madison retreated to her room, claiming a headache. The sounds of muffled crying drifted down the stairs, making Jennifer flinch each time. The feast on the table grew cold, thousands of dollars of food sitting untouched while the family sat in the wreckage of their exposed deceptions. "I'll clean up," Jennifer said mechanically, starting to gather plates. "I'll help," I offered, rising slowly, making sure to wince as if my old bones protested. "No, Dad, you rest," David said, his voice hollow. "You've been through enough." I shuffled to the living room and sank into the leather chair by the fire, pulling one of the dinner rolls from my pocket and eating it slowly, making sure they could see me from the dining room. The image of their formerly wealthy father eating hoarded bread would burn in their memories. Tyler joined me a few minutes later, collapsing on the sofa with the exhaustion of someone who'd just had their worldview shattered. "Grandpa, I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't know about any of it. The money you were sending, the lies about being broke. I feel like an idiot." "You're not an idiot, Tyler. You trusted your parents. That's what children are supposed to do." "I'm 21, not a child anymore. I should have seen it. The vacation to Dubai, the VIP passes to Coachella. God, you paid for all of that, didn't you?" "Through them?" I didn't answer directly, just stared into the fire. "Ashley's probably going to break up with me," he continued. "She thinks I was lying to her too. And maybe I was, in a way. I knew we had money for things when we wanted them, but I told myself we were middle class, struggling like everyone else. It was easier than asking questions." "Sometimes we believe what we need to believe," I said softly. From the kitchen, we could hear David and Jennifer arguing in harsh whispers. Phrases drifted through. "Your father had a plan. Everything's ruined. What do we do now?" "They're going to kick you out," Tyler said suddenly. "As soon as they think they can get away with it, they'll find a reason to send you to some home or shelter. I heard them talking last month about what they'd do when you got too old to live alone. They had already picked out a state-run facility." The revelation hit me harder than I expected. They'd been planning to warehouse me even when they thought I was rich. "Tyler," I said carefully, "I need you to do something for me." "Anything, Grandpa." "In the inside pocket of my old jacket, the Army surplus one, there's a small recorder. Could you get it for me?" Quietly. Tyler looked confused but nodded. He slipped upstairs and returned a few minutes later with the device, which was still recording. I clicked it off and slipped it into my pocket. "What's that for?" he asked. "Insurance," I said. "Sometimes it's important to have a record of the truth." Madison came downstairs, her eyes red and puffy. She curled up in the corner of the sofa, as far from everyone as she could get while still being in the same room. "I'm sorry about your internship concerns," I said to her. "I wish I could help." She laughed bitterly. "You've been helping, for years apparently. I just never saw any of it. Do you know what Mom told me when I asked for help with textbooks? She said we were barely scraping by, that I needed to learn to stand on my own feet. Meanwhile, she was getting her nails done. Every week at that place that charges $200. "Your parents must have had their reasons," I said, though the words tasted like ash. "Their reason was greed," Madison said flatly. "Pure, simple greed." David appeared in the doorway, his face haggard. "Kids, could you give Grandpa and me a minute?" Tyler and Madison exchanged glances but left the room. I heard them go upstairs, their footsteps heavy with reluctance. David sat where Tyler had been, running his hands through his hair. For a moment, I saw the boy he'd been, uncertain, always looking for approval, never quite sure he was good enough. "Dad, I need to know. Is it really all gone? The money, the investments, everything?" "Why does it matter, David? Would it change how you treat me?" He flinched. "That's not fair." "Isn't it? You've been lying to me for 15 years, claiming poverty while living in luxury. What's fair about that?" You don't understand, David said, his voice rising. Do you have any idea what it's like to be the son of Harold Winchester? Everyone expected me to be some business genius like you. Every job interview, every social interaction. Oh, you're Harold's son? You must have inherited his business acumen, but I didn't. I'm not you, Dad. I failed at everything I tried. So you succeeded at failing? Made it your career? I gave up, he admitted. After the third business went under, I just gave up. And then you offered to help, and it was so easy. Just a few thousand here and there, you said. To get back on my feet, you said. But my feet never found the ground again. It became easier to take than to try. And Jennifer? David's jaw tightened. Jennifer came from nothing. Her father was a drunk. Her mother cleaned houses. When she married me, she thought she was marrying into security. When that security evaporated, she adapted. The lies were her idea at first, just small ones. Exaggerate a medical bill, inflate a car repair. You never questioned anything, so the lies got bigger. And you went along with it. I'm weak, David said simply. You always knew that, didn't you? Even when I was a kid. Mom was the one who believed in me, but you knew I'd never amount to much. The pain in his voice was real, and for a moment, my resolve wavered. Then I remembered the recording. He's so gullible. It's all coming to us eventually anyway. I believed in you enough to give you $60,000 a year, I said. That's not nothing, David. It's not the same as respect, he shot back. You gave me money because you felt sorry for me, not because you thought I deserved it. I gave you money because you're my son, and you said you needed it. What other reason did I need? David stood abruptly. The guest room is made up. Your things are in the bathroom. We'll figure out next steps tomorrow. Next steps. Getting you back on your feet. Insurance claims, social services, whatever it takes. And if it takes longer than expected? If I'm here for weeks, months? David's silence was answer enough. After he left, I sat alone by the dying fire, thinking about the distance between fathers and sons, about the lies we tell ourselves to make our failures bearable. The house grew quiet, everyone retreating to their corners to nurse their wounds and recalculate their futures. Around midnight, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Jennifer appeared in a silk robe, her makeup removed, looking older and more vulnerable than I'd ever seen her. Can't sleep? I asked. She shook her head, sitting carefully in the chair across from me. Harold, I need to know something. The Garrison boy, is he real? Why would you ask that? Because I've been thinking. You show up on Christmas, supposedly homeless after a fire, with exactly $20,000 in cash and a story about giving away hundreds of thousands to a sick child. It's very convenient. She was smarter than David, always had been. I could see her mind working, trying to piece together the puzzle. You think I'm lying? I think there's more to this story than you're telling us. The Harold Winchester I know wouldn't let his insurance lapse. He wouldn't give away his last dollar to strangers, and he certainly wouldn't show up at Christmas dinner looking like he'd been sleeping in a shelter. Maybe you don't know me as well as you think. She leaned forward, her eyes sharp despite the late hour. Or maybe I know you better than you think. This is a test, isn't it? Some kind of elaborate test. I met her gaze steadily. If it were a test, Jennifer, how do you think you're doing? She sat back as if I'd slapped her. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're going to get tonight. We sat in silence for a long moment, the tension crackling between us like the dying embers in the fireplace. We're not bad people, Harold, she said finally. We lost our way. The money made it easy to keep lying, to ourselves as much as to you. We told ourselves we'd pay you back someday, that when David's business took off, we'd return every penny with interest. But the business never took off because there was no business. No, she admitted. There hasn't been a real business in 5 years. David gives financial advice to a few friends, makes maybe $1,000 a month. The rest came from you. And you were comfortable with that? Living off an old man's generosity while pretending to be poor? Comfortable? She laughed bitterly. I haven't been comfortable in years. Every check you sent felt like another bar in a prison we were building around ourselves. But we couldn't stop. The mortgage on this house, yes, it's paid off, but the property taxes are crushing. The cars, the club membership, the kids' expectations, it all became a machine that needed constant feeding. You could have lived more modestly. Could we? Once you start pretending, Harold, it becomes impossible to stop. Our friends think David's a successful consultant. The kids' friends think we're wealthy. If we suddenly downsized, started living like we were actually struggling, everyone would know we'd been lying. The shame would have been worse than stealing from an old man. She flinched. We never thought of it as stealing. You offered, we accepted. It was just family helping family. While you laughed about how gullible I was, her face went white. You heard that. I hear a lot of things, Jennifer. I'm old, not deaf. She stood abruptly, wrapping her robe tighter. The guest room has clean towels in the closet. There's medication in the bathroom cabinet if you need anything for pain. Jennifer, I called as she reached the stairs. What's going to happen tomorrow? She paused without turning around. I don't know, Harold. For the first time in years, I honestly don't know. After she went upstairs, I remained by the dying fire, thinking about tomorrow, about the final act of this Christmas tragedy. They still didn't know the truth, that their broken, homeless father was anything but. Tomorrow, or perhaps the day after, I would reveal everything. But tonight, I wanted them to sit with their discomfort, to feel what it was like to have their carefully constructed world collapse. I made my way to the guest room, noting the small touches that betrayed their wealth even here, the Egyptian cotton sheets, the down comforter, the flat-screen TV mounted on the wall. This room alone was nicer than most people's master bedrooms, yet they'd cried poverty for 15 years. Before getting into bed, I pulled out the recorder and listened to some of what it had captured. David and Jennifer's argument in the kitchen was particularly revealing. This is a disaster, Jennifer's recorded voice said. If he's really broke, we're fucked. We'll manage, David replied. With what? We're maxed out on credit cards, the Tesla payment is killing us, and Tyler's graduation trip is already booked. We were counting on that inheritance. Maybe he's not telling us everything. Maybe there's more money hidden somewhere. And maybe he really did give it all away to save some kid. Your father's just sentimental enough to do something that stupid. Don't call him stupid. Why not? He gave away millions to strangers while we're drowning in debt. Debt we created by living beyond our means. Means he provided. This is his fault as much as ours. I clicked off the recorder, having heard enough. Tomorrow would bring new revelations, new confrontations. But tonight, I lay in their guest bed, in their luxury home built on lies, and felt something I hadn't expected. Sadness. Not for myself, but for the family we could have been if greed hadn't poisoned the well of our relationships. I woke on December 26th to the sound of urgent whispers in the hallway. The clock read 6:47 a.m., too early for a normal morning after Christmas, which meant something was happening. I lay still, straining to hear. Can't just throw him out, Tyler was saying. We're not throwing him out, David replied. We're exploring options. You called 3 nursing homes already. I heard you. State-assisted living facilities, Jennifer corrected, and it's for his own good. We're not equipped to care for an elderly person with no resources. He's been here 1 day, Tyler's voice rose. 1 day and you're already trying to get rid of him? Keep your voice down, David hissed, and it's not about getting rid of him. It's about finding the best solution for everyone. I rose quietly, still wearing David's borrowed pajamas, and crept to the door. Through the crack, I could see them clustered in the hallway. David still in his robe, Jennifer fully dressed as if she'd been up for hours, Tyler in sweatpants and a t-shirt, his face flushed with anger. The best solution, Tyler said bitterly. Right. And I'm sure it has nothing to do with the fact that he can't write checks anymore. Tyler, that's enough, David said sharply. This is adult business. I'm 21. Then act like it, Jennifer snapped. Your grandfather needs professional care. He's showing signs of confusion, hoarding food, who knows what else. There could be dementia setting in. He seems perfectly clear to me, Madison's voice came from her doorway. Clearer than you two, anyway. You don't understand the situation, Jennifer said. I understand that you got $60,000 a year for 15 years and told us we were broke, Madison shot back. I understand that you're looking to dump Grandpa in a home the morning after Christmas because he's no longer useful to you. Madison, David's voice was sharp. "You will not speak to your mother that way." "Why not?" "You speak to Grandpa that way. I heard you last night, Mom, asking him if he was lying about the fire. Who does that?" I decided it was time to make my entrance. I opened the door slowly, shuffling out in my borrowed pajamas, making sure to look confused and vulnerable. "Is everything all right?" I asked, blinking as if I'd just woken. I heard voices. The family froze, guilt written across every face except Tyler's. "Everything's fine, Dad," David said quickly. "We were just discussing breakfast." "It's 6 a.m. I shuffled toward them, deliberately catching my foot on the carpet edge and stumbling slightly. Tyler caught my arm. "Careful, Grandpa." "Thank you, son. I'm a bit unsteady in the mornings now. The shelter beds weren't very comfortable, and my back—" Jennifer's eye twitched. "Harold, we were actually discussing your situation. We want to help you get back on your feet." "Oh?" I looked at her with innocent eyes. "That's very kind." "There are facilities," she began carefully, "places that specialize in helping people who've experienced displacement. They have resources we don't have, professionals who can help with insurance claims, social services, that sort of thing." "Facilities?" I repeated the word slowly, as if processing it. "You mean a nursing home?" "Not a nursing home," David said quickly. "More like transitional housing." "For poor people," I said flatly. "A place for poor old people who've lost everything." The silence stretched uncomfortably. "It would just be temporary," Jennifer said, "until you get the insurance sorted out." "The insurance that won't pay because I was behind on payments?" Another silence. "I have an idea," Tyler said suddenly. "Grandpa stays here. I'll move back home after graduation to help take care of him. I'll get a job, contribute to expenses." "Tyler, that's not realistic," David began. "Why not?" "Because it would inconvenience you? Because you'd have to explain to your country club friends why your homeless father is living with you?" "Tyler," Jennifer's voice was sharp. "No, he's right," I said quietly. "I'm an embarrassment now. The successful Harold Winchester reduced to nothing. What would people think?" "That's not—" David started, but I cut him off. "I'll go," I said simply. "To whatever facility you think is best. I don't want to be a burden." "Grandpa, no," Madison protested. "It's all right, sweetheart. Your parents are right. I need more help than they can provide." I looked at David and Jennifer. "When would you like me to leave?" They had the grace to look ashamed, but not enough to change course. "We thought, maybe after New Year's," David said. "Give us time to find the right place." "Of course. 6 more days of hospitality, that's generous." The sarcasm in my voice was impossible to miss. Tyler looked disgusted, Madison was crying silently, and David and Jennifer seemed to be having another of their silent conversations. "I'll make breakfast," Jennifer said abruptly, fleeing to the kitchen. "I need to make some calls," David muttered, retreating to his office. Left with my grandchildren, I shuffled back toward the guest room. "I should get dressed. Would one of you mind driving me somewhere later?" "Where do you need to go, Grandpa?" Tyler asked. "The remains of my house. I want to see if anything survived. Maybe something of your grandmother's." "I'll take you," Tyler said immediately. "Madison and I both will." An hour later, after a tense breakfast where Jennifer watched me pocket toast with poorly concealed disgust, Tyler, Madison, and I climbed into Tyler's Honda Civic, a gift from his parents, ultimately funded by my money, though he didn't know it at the time. "Where exactly was your house, Grandpa?" Tyler asked as we drove. I gave him my actual address, curious to see their reaction when we arrived at my perfectly intact home. "Grandpa," Madison said from the back seat, "tell us the truth. Is there really no money left?" I turned to look at her. "What would you do if there was?" "What do you mean?" "If I told you I had millions hidden away, what would you do?" She was quiet for a moment. "I don't know. Be relieved, I guess. Not for me, but for you. So you wouldn't have to go to some state facility." "And if I told you I was testing your parents? That this was all an elaborate ruse?" Tyler nearly swerved off the road. "What?" "Hypothetically," I added quickly. "If this were all a test, what would you think?" "I'd think it was brilliant," Tyler said immediately, "and completely justified. They've been lying for years." "I'd be angry," Madison said. "But also, I'd understand. Sometimes you have to lie to expose bigger lies." We drove in silence for a few minutes before Tyler spoke again. "Is it a test, Grandpa?" Turn left here, I said instead of answering. We turned onto my street, tree-lined and peaceful, the houses all standing intact and undamaged. Tyler slowed the car, confusion clear on his face. Grandpa, which house was yours? The white colonial on the right, number 47. Tyler pulled up in front of my house, my completely undamaged, obviously not burned house. The driveway had been plowed, the walkway shoveled. It looked exactly as it always did, perhaps even better with the fresh snow on the roof and holiday wreath on the door. I don't understand, Madison said slowly. There's no fire damage. No, I agreed. There isn't. Tyler turned to stare at me. Grandpa? I pulled out my keys, the keys I'd had all along, and held them up. Would you like to come inside? I'll make us some real coffee, not that swill your mother serves. They followed me in stunned silence as I unlocked my front door and led them into my perfectly intact home. Everything was as I'd left it. Margaret's photos on the mantel, my books in the study, the Christmas tree I'd decorated alone standing in the corner of the living room. Holy shit, Tyler breathed. Sorry, Grandpa, but holy shit. Madison walked around touching things as if to confirm they were real. There was no fire, no insurance problems. My insurance is fully paid up. The Garrison boy with leukemia? A fiction, though I do donate regularly to childhood cancer research in your grandmother's name. Tyler sank into my armchair, the one I'd bought the year he was born. So you're not broke? I have approximately $12 million, though most of it will be going to charity shortly. Charity? Madison's voice was sharp. What about us? I looked at her steadily. What about you? We're your family. Are you? Your parents have been lying to me for 15 years, taking money under false pretenses. That's fraud, Madison. That's theft. But Tyler and I didn't know. No, you didn't. Which is why I've set aside money for your education, real education, not spring breaks in Dubai or designer handbags. Enough for graduate school if you choose, but administered by a trustee who will pay the institutions directly. And our parents, Tyler asked quietly, will receive exactly what? They've earned nothing. Madison was crying now, not silently like before, but with real tears. Grandpa, how could you do this? The performance, the lies. The same way your parents did it for 15 years, easily, with practice, and with the conviction that the end justified the means. Tyler stood abruptly and walked to the window, looking out at the peaceful street. They're going to lose everything, aren't they? The house, the cars, the lifestyle. Probably. Good, he said flatly, surprising both Madison and me. They deserve it. Tyler, Madison protested. What? They do. They've been stealing from Grandpa, lying to us, living like millionaires while claiming poverty. You want to defend that? They're still our parents. Parents who were planning to dump Grandpa in a state facility after one day? Tyler shot back. Parents who cared more about his money than his well-being. I walked to my study and returned with 2 envelopes. These are for you. Don't open them until after New Year's. They contain information about your education trusts and letters explaining everything in detail. Madison took hers with shaking hands. What are you going to do? Tell them the truth. Eventually, but not yet. I want them to live with their decision a little longer, to really feel what it means to choose money over family. That's cruel, Madison said. Is it? Or is it justice? They were prepared to warehouse me like unwanted furniture. They've been lying to me since your grandmother died. They turned our relationship into a transaction. So yes, perhaps it is cruel. But sometimes cruelty is the only teacher that gets through. Tyler turned from the window. What do you want us to do? Nothing. Go home, act normal, let them proceed with their plans to place me in a facility. I'm curious to see how far they'll actually go. And if they actually do it, if they actually drop you at some nursing home, then they'll learn the truth in the most memorable way possible. We spent another hour at my house. I showed them photo albums they'd never seen, told them stories about their grandmother they'd never heard. I gave Madison a piece of Margaret's jewelry, a simple gold locket with our wedding photo inside. For Tyler, I had my father's watch, the one he'd worn when he came to America with nothing but hope. These are your real inheritance, I told them. Not money, but memory. Not wealth, but worth. As we prepared to leave, Madison hugged me tightly. I'm sorry, Grandpa. For everything. You have nothing to apologize for. Yes, I do. I took the money too. The trips, the clothes, the apartment. I never questioned where it came from. I was willfully blind. You were young. I was greedy, she corrected. Maybe not as bad as Mom and Dad, but still greedy. Tyler nodded. We both were. We let ourselves believe the lie because it was comfortable. Then learn from it, I said. Be better. That's all any of us can do. We drove back to David and Jennifer's house in silence. As we pulled into the driveway, Tyler asked, "How long are you going to keep this up?" "Until New Year's Eve," I decided. 1 week of letting them show me who they really are. And then? Then the real fireworks begin. The days between Christmas and New Year's Eve passed like a slow-motion car crash. David and Jennifer grew increasingly bold in their plans to dispose of me, while Tyler and Madison watched in barely concealed horror, knowing the truth but bound by my request to stay silent. On December 27th, Jennifer took me to visit the first transitional facility, a grim building that smelled of disinfectant and despair. The director, a woman with a practiced smile and dead eyes, walked us through hallways lined with elderly people staring at nothing. "We provide 3 meals a day, basic medical care, and therapeutic activities," she droned. "Your father would share a room with 1 other resident." "I'd share a room?" I asked, letting my voice quaver. "It keeps costs down," Jennifer said quickly, "and you'd have company." I looked at the man who would be my roommate, unshaven, muttering to himself, rocking back and forth on a narrow bed. "It's very nice," Jennifer told the director. "We'll be in touch." In the car afterward, she was defensive. "It's not that bad, Harold. It's clean, safe, and they have medical staff." "It's a warehouse for the unwanted," I said flatly. "It's what we can afford," she snapped, then caught herself. "I mean, it's what the state provides for people in your situation." December 28th brought David's attempt at getting power of attorney. He presented me with papers over breakfast, trying to seem casual. "Dad, since you're dealing with so much, I thought it might be easier if I could handle some of the legal stuff for you. Insurance claims, Social Security, that sort of thing." I pretended to study the documents while actually reading every word. Complete power of attorney, giving him control over any assets I might have or recover. "I'll think about it," I said, setting the papers aside. "It would really simplify things," he pressed. I said, "I'll think about it." His jaw clenched, but he said nothing more. That evening, I overheard him on the phone with someone, a lawyer, from the context. "He's clearly not competent," David was saying. "He's hoarding food, confused about dates, and gave away his entire fortune to strangers. That has to constitute diminished capacity. Yes, I understand we'd need a doctor's evaluation. How much would that cost?" Tyler, who was listening with me from the hallway, had to walk away before he said something. December 29th was the worst yet. Jennifer had found another facility, this one even more depressing than the first. As we toured it, she actually haggled with the administrator about the monthly rate, trying to get a discount for early placement. "He's relatively mobile and continent," she said, discussing me as if I weren't standing right there. "That should lower the care requirements." I wanted to scream, to reveal everything right then, but I held my tongue. I wanted them to go all the way, to show their true colors completely. That night at dinner, Madison couldn't contain herself anymore. "This is insane," she said suddenly. "You're treating Grandpa like a piece of furniture you're trying to get rid of." "Madison, you don't understand the complexities," Jennifer began. "I understand that you're shopping for the cheapest dump you can find." "Your grandfather needs professional care," David said firmly. "He needs family," Madison shot back. "He needs love and support, not a shared room with a stranger in a place that smells like death." "You're being dramatic," Jennifer said. "Am I?" "Tyler, tell them what you think." Tyler set down his fork deliberately. "I think you're both disgusting. I think you're so panicked about losing your lifestyle that you can't see what you're doing to the man who supported you for 15 years. "How dare you?" David started. "How dare I? How dare you? He's your father. He gave you everything, and the moment he needs help, you're ready to dump him like garbage." "If you feel so strongly, you take care of him," Jennifer snapped. "You pay for his medications, his doctor visits, his food, his care when he can't manage alone anymore." "I would if I could," Tyler said. But I can't, because you never taught me how to do anything but spend money I didn't earn. The truth of that statement hung in the air like a poison cloud. December 30th, I gave them one last chance. At breakfast, I asked, what if the insurance does come through? What if I can rebuild? David and Jennifer exchanged glances. That would be wonderful, Dad, David said carefully. Of course, that could take months, even years. And I'd stay here until then? Another exchange of glances. We'll see, Jennifer said. A lot depends on the settlement amount, whether you could afford to rebuild or would need to find something smaller. More manageable, David added. At your age, a big house doesn't make sense anyway. Maybe a senior community, Jennifer suggested, one of those nice places with meal plans and medical staff on site. They were already planning to institutionalize me, even if I got the money back. The betrayal was complete. New Year's Eve arrived gray and cold. David and Jennifer were hosting a party, their annual gathering for what they called their closest friends, but what I recognized as a networking event for David's non-existent business. Dad, you don't have to come down if you don't feel up to it, David said that morning. It might be overwhelming for you. Translation: please stay hidden so we don't have to explain your presence. Actually, I'd like to attend, I said. One last party before I go to the facility. They'd scheduled my placement for January 2nd, 48 hours away. Of course, Jennifer said through gritted teeth. Do you have something appropriate to wear? I looked down at David's cast-off clothes. This isn't appropriate. I'll find you something, she said with barely concealed irritation. The party started at 8. By 9, the house was full of people in cocktail attire, champagne flowing, catered food circulating. David and Jennifer had spent thousands on this party, money they claimed not to have. I came downstairs at 9:30, wearing the best of David's hand-me-downs, but still looking shabby compared to the guests. Conversations stuttered to a stop as people noticed me. Dad, David appeared quickly at my elbow. Let me introduce you to some people. What followed was a series of increasingly awkward introductions where David referred to me as his father who's staying with us temporarily, without ever explaining why. The guests were polite but clearly uncomfortable, especially when I mentioned the shelter and the fire. At 11 o'clock, I decided it was time. I walked to the center of the living room and tapped a spoon against my water glass. I hadn't been offered champagne until I had everyone's attention. I'd like to propose a toast, I said. David and Jennifer looked panicked but couldn't stop me without causing a scene. This past week, I began, has been educational. I've learned things about my family I never knew. I've seen sides of them I never imagined. And I've discovered truths that have changed everything. The room was silent, everyone sensing drama but not understanding its shape. 6 days ago, I came to this house claiming to be homeless after a fire. I said I'd lost everything, that I was destitute, that I needed my family's help. Dad, David warned, and my son and daughter-in-law responded with efficiency. Within 2 days, they were touring nursing homes. Within 3, they were trying to get power of attorney. Within 4, they had selected a state-run facility where I would share a room with a stranger, eat institutional food, and wait to die. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Jennifer's face was crimson. Harold, you're confused, she started. I'm not confused, I said clearly. In fact, I've never been more clear. You see, there was no fire. The silence was deafening. My house is intact. My money is secure. My mental facilities are perfect. The only thing that burned down this week was the illusion that my son and his wife cared about me as anything more than a source of income. You lied to us? David's voice was strangled. Like you've lied to me for 15 years? Yes, David, I lied. I wanted to see what would happen if the money stopped. Now I know. I pulled out the recorder and hit play. Their voices filled the room. He's so gullible. It's all coming to us eventually anyway. If he's really broke, we're fucked. Your father's just sentimental enough to do something that's stupid. I stopped the recording. Several guests were already heading for the door. For 15 years, I continued, I've given you $60,000 annually under the pretense that you were struggling. You drove luxury cars while claiming you couldn't afford repairs. You vacationed in 5-star resorts while telling me you couldn't pay medical bills. You lived in this $1 million house while I believed you were barely making mortgage payments. Dad, please. David stepped forward. I'm not finished. Tyler and Madison, could you come here, please? My grandchildren walked forward, Tyler's face grim, Madison tears streaming. These two were innocent in your deception, I said. They believed your lies about being middle class, struggling. They watched you take my money while teaching them that Grandpa was someone to be managed, not loved. But when they learned the truth, they were horrified. They still have conscience, despite your example. Grandpa, Madison said softly, you don't have to do this. Yes, I do. I turned back to the crowd, many of whom were David and Jennifer's country club friends. My son and daughter-in-law were planning to place me in a state-run facility in 2 days. After taking nearly $1 million from me over 15 years, they couldn't spare 6 days of genuine care when they thought I needed it. Jennifer found her voice. You manipulated us. You tested us. I revealed you, I corrected. I showed everyone, including yourselves, who you really are. I pulled out an envelope from my pocket. Not the $20,000, but documents Ben Frost had prepared. Effective immediately, all financial support ends. The charitable trust I've established will distribute my assets to organizations that actually help people in need. Tyler and Madison will have their education funded through a separate trust, but you, David and Jennifer, will receive nothing. Not now, not when I die, not ever. You can't do this, David shouted. I'm your son. Biology doesn't entitle you to my money, I said calmly. Love might have, respect certainly would have, but you showed me neither when you thought I had nothing to offer. The clock began chiming midnight. Champagne glasses were forgotten as everyone stared at the family drama unfolding. Happy New Year, I said to the room. Thank you all for witnessing this. I find that shame works better with an audience. I walked toward the door, my shuffling gait replaced by my normal stride. Tyler and Madison followed me. Grandpa, where are you going? Madison asked. Home, I said. My real home. You're welcome to visit any time. Your parents, however, are not. You can't just leave, Jennifer shrieked. What are we supposed to tell people? The truth, I suggested. Try it for once. The last thing I heard as I left was David shouting at his guests to get out, Jennifer sobbing, and the sound of champagne glasses shattering on the floor. Tyler drove me home in silence. Madison held my hand in the back seat. When we arrived at my intact, unburned house, we sat in the driveway for a moment. Was it worth it, Grandpa? Tyler asked. The deception, the pain? Ask me in a year, I said. When we see who your parents become without my money, maybe they'll find themselves, find actual work, find redemption, or maybe they'll just find new victims. Either way, I'll be free of the lie we've all been living. We love you, Grandpa, Madison said. Really love you, not your money. I know, sweetheart. That's why your education is secured. Use it well. Become something real, something earned. They helped me inside, and we spent the first hours of the new year looking through old photos, telling stories of Margaret, planning their futures, real futures, built on truth rather than deception. 3 weeks later, Ben Frost called to inform me that David and Jennifer were attempting to contest the trust, claiming elder abuse and mental incompetence. The recording of their conversations, plus testimony from the nursing home administrators about their eagerness to place me, ended that quickly. 6 months later, Tyler graduated and got a job on his own merits. Madison changed her major from design to social work, wanting to help elderly people who really were alone and abandoned. David and Jennifer lost the house within a year, unable to maintain it without my payments. Last I heard, David was working as a junior sales associate at an electronics store, and Jennifer was teaching full-time, no more spa days or designer clothes. They've never contacted me. Sometimes I wonder if Margaret would approve of what I did. I think she'd understand, even if she couldn't condone it. She always said the truth had a way of surfacing, that lies were like weeds. You could cover them up, but they'd always grow through eventually. I proved her right, just not in the way she might have expected. The money is doing good now, real good. The Children's Hospital has a new wing. Veterans are getting help they need. Cancer research continues in Margaret's name. And I sleep peacefully, no longer wondering if my family loves me or my bank account. The answer, painful as it was to learn, set me free. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of the story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.